In the heart of eastern Nigeria lay the tranquil village of Umuna, cradled by lush green hills and winding streams. Life in Umuna moved at a rhythm dictated by the rising and setting of the sun. The air was filled with the chatter of birds, the occasional laughter of children, and the hum of village life. Amid this serene backdrop, two young girls, Loveth and Josephine, were inseparable. Loveth and Josephine weren't sisters by blood, but they might as well have been. The villagers often joked that they were twins, joined not by lineage but by an unbreakable bond. The two girls were a study in contrasts. Loveth, with her sharp wit and restless energy, was the dreamer. Josephine, calm and nurturing, was the steady anchor. Together they were a perfect balance, a yin and yang that complemented each other. The day often began with chores. At the break of dawn, the girls could be seen walking toward the village stream, their chatter filling the air as they balanced clay pots on their heads. Loveth was always the first to break into a sprint when they neared the stream, racing ahead while Josephine called after her, laughing, "Loveth, you'll trip and fall one day." Josephine would tease, shaking her head as Loveth's bare feet splashed into the water. "I'll never fall, Joe," Loveth would reply, her voice full of confidence. "I'm faster than the wind." Fetching water was just one of the many tasks they tackled together. From weeding their family farms to pounding yam for dinner, the girls were inseparable. The villagers often marveled at their closeness, remarking on how rare it was for two friends to share such a deep bond. While Josephine was content with the simplicity of village life, Loveth often spoke of bigger dreams. As they sat under the mango tree after school, Loveth would describe her vision of a life beyond Umuna. "One day, Joe, I'll leave this village and live in a big city," Loveth said one afternoon, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I'll wear the finest clothes, live in a mansion, and have everything I've ever wanted." Josephine smiled, though her heart ached at the thought of being separated from her best friend. "What will you do with all that wealth, Loveth?" "I'll do everything," Loveth replied, her voice firm. "I'll never have to worry about struggling like our parents do." Josephine nodded but remained quiet. Unlike Loveth, she found joy in the small everyday moments, sharing meals with her family, tending to the farm, and dreaming of a quiet life with someone she loved. As the girls entered adulthood, life in Umuna began to shift. Josephine met Namdi, a local hunter whose laughter was as warm as the evening sun. Namdi was a hard worker, known for his skill with a bow and his unyielding devotion to Josephine. The two often strolled through the village hand in hand, their affection evident in every glance. "Do you really love him, Joe?" Loveth asked one evening as they sat outside Josephine's family hut, the stars twinkling above. "I do," Josephine replied with a soft smile. "He may not have much, but he has a good heart. That's enough for me." Loveth frowned, unable to understand Josephine's contentment with such a simple life. "But what about the future? Don't you want more?" Josephine reached for Loveth's hand, her touch gentle. "Happiness isn't about having more, Loveth. It's about being with someone who truly loves you." Loveth remained silent, her thoughts racing. She admired Josephine's optimism but couldn't help feeling restless. She didn't want to settle for a life of struggle, no matter how much love it held. While Josephine planned her life with Nnamdi, Loveth became increasingly dissatisfied with the village. She saw wealth and success as her ticket out of poverty, a way to escape the hardships that had defined her childhood. But wealth didn't come easily in Umuna, and Loveth was unwilling to wait for fate to hand her the life she wanted. One evening, as they walked back from the stream, Loveth confided in Josephine, "Joe, I can't stay here forever. I need to find a way to make something of myself." Josephine looked at her friend with concern. "What will you do, Loveth?" "I don't know yet," Loveth admitted, "but I'll find a way. I have to." Josephine nodded, though unease gnawed at her. She had always admired Loveth's determination, but this new restlessness felt different, darker, somehow. Josephine married Namdi, and shortly afterward they relocated to his mother's village to care for her during her illness. Loveth was heartbroken by the separation and felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness. This only strengthened her determination to leave the village and seek a different path for her life. Loveth's search for a way out of poverty led her to a secret whispered among the villagers, a powerful native doctor deep in the forest. It was said he could grant wealth and power, but his methods were shrouded in mystery. Desperation drove Loveth to seek him out. One moonless night she ventured into the forest alone, her heart pounding as she followed the faint trail. The air grew colder and the trees seemed to close in around her. When she finally reached the native doctor's shrine, her courage wavered. The native doctor was an imposing figure, his presence both commanding and unnerving. Dressed in flowing robes adorned with cowrie shells and feathers, he sat cross-legged beside a roaring fire. "What brings you here, child?" he asked, his voice deep and resonant. Loveth swallowed her fear and stepped forward. "I want to be wealthy. I want power and influence." The native doctor studied her for a long moment before nodding. "It can be done, but wealth comes at a price. Are you willing to make a sacrifice?" Loveth hesitated, her resolve faltering. "What kind of sacrifice?" The native doctor leaned closer, his gaze piercing. "The eyes of a newborn child. That is the price." Loveth's breath caught, her mind reeling. The thought of harming an innocent child filled her with dread, but the lure of wealth was intoxicating. She couldn't go back to her life in the village, couldn't settle for less than she believed she deserved. "You must decide," the native doctor said. "Wealth or poverty. There is no middle ground." Loveth left the shrine that night, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. She spent sleepless nights wrestling with her conscience, unable to escape the native doctor's words. Her desperation for wealth clashed with her lingering sense of morality, leaving her trapped in a tormenting limbo. Loveth grappled with the challenge of fulfilling the native doctor's demand, pondering endlessly on how and where she could find a baby and perform the ritual without arousing suspicion or getting caught. Just as she was on the verge of giving up, Josephine returned to the village, heavily pregnant. Seeing her best friend again brought a mix of emotions for Loveth, excitement at their reunion and an unsettling realization that the solution to her predicament might have just arrived. She loved her best friend dearly, but the native doctor's words had sunk their claws into her consciousness, and the demand for a newborn's eyes echoed endlessly in her mind. Each visit to Josephine's home became an act of excruciating self-control. She couldn't let her emotions betray her, so she plastered on smiles, brought little gifts, and laughed along with Josephine as they imagined her baby's future. "I want her to have your spirit, Loveth," Josephine said one afternoon, her face glowing, strong, fearless, and determined. Loveth felt her chest tighten. "She'll be perfect, Joe, just like her mother." Josephine smiled, resting a hand on her belly. "I've been thinking of calling her Ada. What do you think?" Loveth froze for a moment before forcing another smile. Ada is a beautiful name. The day Ada was born, the village erupted in celebration. The midwives praised Josephine for her strength, and the elders declared Ada a blessing to her family. Loveth arrived late to the celebration, carrying a small bundle of clothes for the newborn. As she stepped into Josephine's modest home, her heart pounded against her rib cage. Josephine looked radiant despite her exhaustion. She cradled Ada in her arms, her face glowing with love. "Loveth, come see her. Isn't she beautiful?" Loveth approached slowly. When she saw Ada's tiny face, her resolve faltered. The baby's eyes were wide and alert, a deep, soulful brown that seemed to hold all the innocence in the world. "She's perfect," Loveth whispered, her voice barely audible. Josephine beamed. "Here, hold her. You're her auntie after all." Loveth's hands trembled as she took the baby. Ada cooed softly, and for a brief moment, Loveth felt a wave of guilt so intense it nearly brought her to her knees. How could she even think of harming this innocent child? But the native doctor's promise loomed over her, a shadow she couldn't escape. That night, Loveth sat alone in her room, clutching a cloth she had taken from Josephine's home. Her thoughts raced. She had come to the precipice of a decision she could no longer avoid. If she didn't act soon, her chance for wealth would slip away forever. 3 days later, Loveth packed a small bag with gifts for Ada and Josephine. She included a hand-sewn baby blanket, a small rattle, and a bottle of palm oil. To anyone else, she appeared as the doting friend, eager to support a new mother. But inside, Loveth was a storm of fear, guilt, and determination. When she arrived at Josephine's home, she found her friend sitting outside, nursing Ada under the shade of a mango tree. Josephine's face lit up when she saw Loveth. "You're here," Josephine exclaimed. "I was just about to send for you. Come inside." Loveth followed her into the house, her heart pounding. The house smelled of freshly cooked yam porridge, and the atmosphere was warm and inviting. Josephine placed Ada in a small crib and gestured for Loveth to sit. "You've been so distant lately," Josephine said, her tone soft with concern. "Is everything all right?" Loveth forced a smile. "I've just been busy with market work, but I'm here now." Josephine nodded, her trust unwavering. She handed Ada to Loveth, who cradled the baby with trembling hands. The weight of what she was about to do nearly overwhelmed her, but the native doctor's warning echoed in her mind. Wealth comes with sacrifice. Loveth whispered the incantation she had been taught. A flash of light flickered in her eyes, unseen by anyone else, and in that moment Ada's world went dark. Loveth returned the baby to her mother, her hands trembling. "She's beautiful, Josephine. You're so lucky." Josephine smiled, oblivious to what had just transpired. "Thank you, Loveth." That night, Loveth packed her belongings and left the village. She didn't say goodbye to anyone, not even her family. The native doctor's final instruction rang in her ears: "You must never see the child again, or the consequences will be dire." As she boarded a bus to Lagos, Loveth stared out the window, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She had sacrificed her soul for wealth, and while she would achieve her dreams, she knew she could never return to the life she had once known. The bus rumbled down the dirt road, carrying her farther away from the village with every passing mile. Loveth closed her eyes, willing herself to forget the evil she had done, but deep down she knew she would carry their ghosts with her forever. Loveth stepped off the bus in Lagos, a city teeming with life, ambition, and anonymity. She was no longer the village girl everyone knew. Her new identity was that of Angela. With the money she had left and the native doctor's guidance, she began to build a life far removed from her past. The city overwhelmed her at first, the blaring horns of Danfos, the relentless chatter of hawkers, and the sheer enormity of the crowds. But Loveth was nothing if not resourceful. She found a small room in a crowded tenement and began her climb up the ladder of Lagos's booming gold trade. Her starting capital was meager, but her determination was boundless. The native doctor had promised her unimaginable wealth, and soon her fortune began to grow. Within months she had established herself as a reputable gold merchant, her clientele ranging from market women to high society elites. With every transaction, her name, now Madame Gold, gained more recognition, and her pockets grew heavier. Years passed, and Angela's life transformed. She traded her humble beginnings for opulent surroundings. Her home, a sprawling mansion in Victoria Island, was the epitome of luxury, adorned with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and expensive art pieces. She surrounded herself with the finest things money could buy: designer clothes, imported perfumes, and custom jewelry that dazzled at every glance. Her signature look became iconic in the Lagos social scene: expensive lace fabrics in bold colors, intricately styled hair, and layers of gold jewelry, earrings, necklaces, bracelets, all shimmering in the light. Her presence commanded respect and envy in equal measure. Angela had mastered the art of reinvention. She buried Loveth so deeply within herself that even she almost forgot her origins. She rarely spoke of her childhood, and when she did, it was with vague references to a distant village no one could place on a map. Her rise to wealth attracted many suitors, but Angela had no illusions about love. She chose a husband not for companionship, but for social elevation. Chief Olatunji, a well-connected businessman, was her perfect match. Their marriage was a spectacle of grandeur, with society's elite in attendance, a parade of luxury cars, and a reception that shut down parts of Lagos for hours. Though their union lacked genuine affection, it served its purpose. Chief Olatunji introduced Angela to powerful circles, further solidifying her status as one of Nigeria's most influential women. Together, they built an empire of interconnected businesses, with Angela's gold trade at its heart. Angela's only child, Collins, was the jewel of her life. From the moment he was born, she vowed to give him the world. Handsome, intelligent, and charming, Collins was the embodiment of everything Angela had sacrificed for. She spared no expense in raising him, sending him to the best schools in Nigeria before enrolling him in an elite boarding school in Switzerland. Collins grew up far removed from his mother's shadowy past. To him, she was simply a doting mother who worked tirelessly to ensure his future. He admired her strength and resilience, unaware of the dark secrets that fueled her success. When Collins decided to pursue medicine, Angela couldn't have been prouder. She funded his education with ease, ensuring he lacked nothing during his years abroad. She often bragged to her social circle about her brilliant son who would one day save lives. Despite her wealth and influence, Angela's past haunted her in quiet moments. The image of Ada's lifeless eyes and Josephine's ignorance were buried deep in her mind, but never completely silenced. She avoided mirrors at night, fearing she might see Loveth staring back at her. Occasionally she dreamt of the village she had abandoned. In those dreams Josephine appeared, her face aged and weary, holding Ada in her arms. "Why did you do this?" she would ask, her voice filled with pain. Angela always woke from those dreams in a cold sweat, clutching her gold necklace as if it could protect her from the judgment she feared was inevitable. 35 years after leaving the village, Angela's carefully constructed world began to shift. Collins returned to Nigeria, his medical degree in hand and a fire in his heart to make a difference. He was everything Angela had hoped he would be: empathetic, driven, and compassionate. His decision to specialize in pediatrics filled her with pride, though she found it ironic given the source of her wealth. Collins quickly became a rising star in the medical field, securing a position at one of the country's largest hospitals. Angela reveled in his success, hosting lavish parties in his honor and introducing him to Lagos's elite. But Collins was uninterested in his mother's world of wealth and influence. He preferred quiet acts of kindness, often using his salary to fund free clinics in underserved communities. His generosity endeared him to many, but it also brought him into contact with the very people Angela had spent her life avoiding. One fateful morning, Collins was rushing to the hospital for an emergency when his car nearly hit a young blind woman crossing the street. He slammed on the brakes, his heart racing as he jumped out to check on her. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice filled with concern. "Are you all right?" The woman, wearing dark glasses and holding a white cane, nodded. "I'm fine," she replied, her voice soft but steady. "Thank you for stopping." Collins helped her to the sidewalk, his gaze lingering on her face. There was something about her, her calm demeanor, her quiet strength that struck him. Before he could say more, she thanked him and continued on her way. Days later, he saw her again, this time outside a busy mall, begging for alms. Recognizing her, he approached cautiously. "You shouldn't be out here," he said gently. "Let me help you." The woman introduced herself as Ada, explaining that she begged to support her ailing mother. Collins was moved by her story and insisted on taking her to lunch. Over the meal, they talked about her life, her mother's illness, and her struggles as a blind woman in a city that offered little support. When Ada mentioned her small room in a nearby community, Collins asked to meet her mother. He drove them to the hospital, covering all the expenses for her treatment. Ada's gratitude was palpable, and Collins found himself drawn to her more with each passing day. As Collins and Ada grew closer, Angela noticed a change in her son. He seemed happier, more animated, but he avoided talking about the woman he had fallen for. When Angela pressed him, he assured her she would meet Ada soon. Angela had no idea that the woman her son loved was the ghost from her past, the blind girl whose eyes had secured her fortune. Collins couldn't hide the excitement Ada brought into his life. Every week he visited her small, humble home, bringing provisions, medications for her mother, and the companionship Ada had grown to cherish. Her laughter became the melody of his days, her gentle spirit the anchor to his often hectic life. For Ada, Collins was more than a kind man. He was her miracle. With him, the world seemed brighter, despite her blindness. He read books to her, told her stories about his years abroad, and listened patiently to her recount memories of her childhood. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day, and soon the boundaries of friendship blurred into love. Over time, Collins thought of ways to help Ada regain her sight. He was resolute in his mission to help Ada regain her sight. Driven by unwavering determination, he took her to consult the best ophthalmologists in the country. They conducted an extensive series of tests, but none could explain the cause of her blindness. Desperate for answers, Collins ensured that the test results were sent to top specialists abroad. Yet, even with their expertise, the conclusions remained the same. There was no clear reason for Ada's condition. Despite the string of disappointing reports, Collins' love for Ada stayed steadfast, unwavering in the face of uncertainty. Despite his affection, Collins hesitated to introduce Ada to his mother. He knew Madame Angela's standards, her desire for him to marry someone of equal wealth and status. He feared Ada's blindness and humble background might cloud Angela's acceptance. Angela was no fool. She noticed her son's frequent absences and the warmth in his voice when he spoke about someone special. Her curiosity piqued. She began to ask more probing questions during their conversations. "When will I meet this girl who's stolen your heart?" Angela asked one evening over dinner. Collins hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Soon, Mama. I want to make sure everything is perfect before you meet her." Angela smiled, but her instincts told her there was more to the story. She prided herself on knowing every detail of her son's life, and his evasiveness unsettled her. Determined to uncover the truth, she quietly asked one of her staff members to follow Collins the next time he left the house. Collins, being just as sharp as his mother, if not sharper, quickly realized he was being followed. Confronting the spy, he issued a stern warning, instructing him not to disclose any unnecessary details to his mother. Instead, he told the spy to report that his girlfriend was a stunningly beautiful woman from a respectable middle-class family living on the mainland. When Angela received the report, she felt a twinge of concern over the family's social status. However, her primary focus remained on her son's happiness and ensuring that his partner came from a decent and respectable background. Despite her doubts about the social status, Angela resolved to meet Collins's girlfriend. If for no other reason, she needed to see the girl who had captured her son's heart. Over dinner one evening, she smiled warmly and said, "Collins, I think it's time you brought this girl home. I want to meet the woman who makes my son so happy." Collins was caught off guard but agreed. "All right, Mama, I'll invite her this weekend." Angela busied herself with preparations, ensuring everything in the mansion was perfect. She wanted to make a strong impression, even as unease gnawed at her. When the evening arrived, Ada and her mother were overwhelmed by the opulence of the mansion. Collins had taken Ada shopping earlier that week, helping her pick out a simple yet elegant dress. Her mother wore a modest gown, and they both carried themselves with dignity despite the grandeur surrounding them. Angela descended the staircase, her signature lace gown shimmering in the dim light. Her jewelry sparkled, her hair styled to perfection. Her smile was radiant as she approached her son and his guests, until her eyes landed on Josephine. For a moment, time stood still. Angela's breath caught in her throat as recognition slammed into her like a freight train. Josephine, older and wearier, but unmistakably her childhood best friend, stood before her, and next to her was Ada, her dark glasses shielding the eyes Angela had once cursed. "Loveth?" Josephine's voice trembled, her disbelief clear. "Is it really you?" Angela froze, the name she had buried for decades hanging in the air like a ghost. She stared at Josephine, her mind racing, her carefully constructed facade threatening to collapse. "Loveth, it's me, Josephine." Josephine stepped closer, her face lighting up with joy. "After all these years, I've been looking everywhere for you." Angela's heart pounded as she struggled to regain her composure. She forced a smile, her voice trembling. "Josephine, it's been so long." Josephine beamed, oblivious to Angela's discomfort. She turned to Ada, her pride evident. "This is Ada, my daughter. She's all grown up now. Loveth, can you believe it?" Angela's eyes darted to Ada, her stomach churning. She had hoped, prayed that this moment would never come. But there Ada stood, a living reminder of the sin Angela had tried to bury. As Josephine guided Ada forward, Angela's facade cracked. "No!" she cried, stepping back. Her voice was filled with a mix of fear and anguish. "It can't be!" Josephine frowned, confused. "Loveth, what's wrong?" Before Angela could respond, Ada removed her glasses, revealing her sightless eyes. The sight sent Angela into a spiral of panic. A deafening, thundering noise echoed outside, shaking the very foundation of the mansion. Ada staggered slightly, her hands reaching out. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice trembling. Angela fell to her knees, clutching her head. Memories of the native doctor's warning flooded back. She was never to set eyes on Ada again. The consequences, he had said, would be dire, and then it happened. In a flash of light visible only to Ada and Angela, something shifted. Ada blinked rapidly, her expression changing as the world around her came into focus for the first time. "I can see," Ada whispered, her voice filled with awe. "I can see," Josephine gasped, tears streaming down her face as she hugged her daughter. Colin stood frozen, his mind struggling to comprehend the miracle unfolding before him. But Angela was inconsolable. She let out a guttural scream, her laughter turning hysterical as she confessed everything. "It was me," she cried. "I took her sight. I cursed her. I wanted to be rich, and this is the price I paid." Before anyone could react, Angela ran from the house, her screams echoing through the night. The gates, inexplicably open, allowed her to flee into the street. Collins and Josephine followed, calling after her, but they were too late. An oncoming car struck Angela with devastating force. By the time they reached her, she was lifeless, her body broken and still. Collins fell to his knees, his heart shattering at the sight. Josephine held Ada close, her own tears mixing with her relief that her daughter's sight had been restored. The weeks following Madame Angela's death were a whirlwind of emotions for everyone involved. Collins, once proud of his mother's achievements and legacy, now grappled with the weight of her betrayal. The story of her confession and untimely demise quickly became the subject of hushed whispers among the elites she once associated with. But for Collins, the true burden lay in reconciling his love for Ada with the actions of his mother. Ada, meanwhile, struggled with the overwhelming change in her life. Her newly restored sight brought both joy and disorientation. Colors she had only imagined came alive in vibrant detail, but the memory of the past, years spent in darkness, begging to survive, clung to her. She found herself retreating into moments of quiet reflection, trying to understand this newfound reality. Josephine, too, found herself torn between relief and sorrow. The return of Ada's sight was a miracle she had prayed for every night. But the cost, betrayal by her childhood best friend, was a wound that would take time to heal. Still, she knew she had to move forward for Ada's sake, if not her own. Collins poured himself into his work at the hospital, often working late into the night. But his thoughts always returned to Ada and her mother. He visited them weekly, ensuring they had everything they needed. Each visit was an opportunity for him to express his remorse, not just for his mother's actions, but for the pain and hardship they had endured. One evening, Collins brought a small, intricately wrapped box to Ada's home. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with the inscription, "Strength in light, love in hope." Ada traced the words with her fingers before looking up at him. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her voice heavy with emotion. "But you don't have to keep trying to make up for what happened. It wasn't your fault." "I know," Collins said softly, his eyes searching hers. "But I feel responsible, Ada. My mother's actions, no matter how distant they seem from me, are part of my family's story. I want our story to be different." Ada's smile was small but genuine. "It already is." As months turned into a year, Collins and Ada's bond grew stronger. Collins found himself falling deeper in love with her resilience and kindness. She, in turn, admired his empathy and unwavering determination to right his mother's wrongs. They began talking about the future, tentative dreams of what could be. One evening, under the glow of a full moon, Collins invited Ada to a quiet dinner at his home. He had spent days preparing, ensuring every detail was perfect. Candlelight flickered across the table and soft music played in the background. Ada, dressed in a simple yet elegant dress, looked radiant. After dinner, Collins took her hand and led her to the garden. The night air was cool and fragrant with the scent of blooming jasmine. Collins knelt on one knee, holding out a small velvet box. "Ada," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "you have shown me what true strength looks like. You've endured more than anyone should, and yet you've remained kind, loving, and hopeful. I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in Ada's eyes as she nodded, her voice catching. "Yes, Collins, yes." Their wedding was a celebration of love and resilience, held in a small church in the same town where Josephine and Ada had lived for years. Collins insisted on keeping the ceremony intimate, inviting only close friends and family. The church was adorned with white flowers, and sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting a kaleidoscope of colors on the walls. Ada walked down the aisle, her arm linked with her mother's. For Josephine, the moment was bittersweet. She couldn't help but think of Loveth, the friend she had once loved like a sister, and how different their lives had turned out. But as she looked at her daughter, radiant in her white gown, and Collins waiting at the altar, she knew they were beginning a new chapter, one untainted by the past. Collins's vows were heartfelt. Ada, you are my light, my hope, and my inspiration. I promise to stand by you, to cherish you, and to build a life together filled with love and understanding. Ada's vows were equally moving. Collins, you saw me not for what I lacked, but for who I am. You gave me hope when I had none. I promise to love you, to stand by you, and to walk with you into whatever the future holds. As they exchanged rings, the church erupted in applause and cheers. It was a moment of healing, not just for the couple, but for everyone who had been touched by their journey. After the wedding, Collins and Ada settled into a modest yet beautiful home. Collins continued his work as a pediatrician. With Collins' unwavering support, Ada established a foundation and school dedicated to empowering the blind. Through heartfelt speeches, she frequently shared her story, inspiring hope and resilience among the students. The foundation focused on providing quality education for those pursuing academics and vocational training for those with a passion for skilled work. Its mission was clear: to ensure that every blind individual it reached could build a future filled with opportunity, dignity, and purpose. Josephine moved in with them, her health improving steadily under Collins's care. She often spent her days gardening or playing with the children who visited Collins's clinic. Watching her daughter thrive brought her a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. As years passed, Collins and Ada's family grew. Their home became a place of laughter and warmth, a sanctuary where love and forgiveness reigned. Collins often told their children stories of courage and redemption, teaching them the importance of compassion and integrity. Ada, with her vision restored and her heart full, often reflected on the twists and turns of her life. Though her journey had been marked by pain, it had also been filled with love, love that healed, strengthened, and endured. Their story became a testament to the power of forgiveness and the resilience of the human spirit. And as they built their life together, Collins and Ada proved that even the darkest chapters can lead to the brightest beginnings. Hello, beautiful people. A huge thank you for your support and for engaging with my stories. Your likes, shares, and thoughtful comments mean the world to me and keep this channel thriving. Please continue to like, share, and leave your amazing comments below. Most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to my channel to help me bring you more captivating and inspiring stories. Thank you so much. Hi, beautiful people. Thank you for watching Folktales by Promise. Please remember to like, share, and leave a comment below to encourage me. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with more exciting stories.